Well, I have to say, I was actually quite content with how the Spanish Grand Prix went this year. And from the race we just saw, this has to be probably the best outcome we could get at a track like this. Of course, this is the show where we put all the races in the 2021 season up against each other. Is this going to be the worst race of the season? Find out right now. Cass, the first half of the race, how was it for you?
As we all know, the majority of the time, the person that is on pole in Spain tends to win in Spain. But right off the bat, seeing Max go so deep, pull off that overtake right away, I just immediately assumed that he had full control of this race from here on out.
Especially when looking back at Hamilton's onboard, it really shows that Verstappen was willing to pull off a risky move to get this overtake done.
We also saw some unexpected action just a little bit further back, seeing Charles in his Ferrari storming up the inside on Valtteri. I didn't expect the Ferrari to have that much pace, but he was quite speedy right from the get-go. Several laps go by, it kind of seems like everyone is getting comfortable into their positions, and I was here thinking, okay, we are settled. But no, we cut back to Yuki falling down the grid order because his car has just stopped. No power, he's practically rolling backwards, and that's the end of his race. I'm not even sure if he made it a full 10 laps. While the safety car is out, it seemed like a surefire opportunity to bring some people into the pits early on. Giovinazzi is one of the first to make the jump, but his team wasn't completely ready for him. There seemed to be a puncture on one of the tires. It was just a completely chaotic pit stop for him. I think he was held in there for over 30 seconds, and it just seemed from the get-go he was going to have a rough recovery after that pit stop.
So with the race back underway, you have the two front runners gaining a substantial lead, Valtteri being held up by Leclerc, and Ricciardo holding up Perez. And now we're waiting to see who's the first person who's going to go into the pits. Valtteri's the first one to bite, and this causes a chain reaction for Red Bull to react.
By lap 25, Max comes into the pits to fight off any potential strategy moves from Mercedes. Thing is, though, the Red Bull pit crew didn't really seem to be ready for him. They didn't have the tires in place. He comes in. His pit stop is pretty slow at 4.2 seconds, which is far below Red Bull standards. And here we are wondering how this is going to impact the outcome of Max's race.
While Max is in the pits, Hamilton is told to push, but he ends up getting into some issues with Mazepin not respecting blue flags. You get Toto coming on the radio, speaking with the FIA, saying this is unacceptable, we might lose the race because of this.
But as we're approaching the halfway mark, we get a juicy 4-car battle between Alonso, Gio, Vettel, and Gasly. They are all rushing into the same corner. Alonso seemed to be struggling on his tires ever so slightly, so this was making things challenging.
So with that, it brings us to our halfway mark at lap 33. Cass, how are you feeling? What were your scores? Tell the people.
I had my excitement at a 5, which some people might say, you know, it's a bit average, but mind you, it's for this track. I was excited to see a potential battle and strategic back and forth for the lead. There was a little bit of a dramatic factor, which I also put at a 5, for the pit stop mess-ups and who was gonna pull off the undercut or the overcut. And then for the racing, I did put it at a 6. I'm not sure if it's because the quality was actually that high or if it's because we are so not accustomed to seeing this much actual racing and wheel-to-wheel battles at the Spanish Grand Prix. So that puts my score for the first half at approximately a 5.5.
For me, my excitement was at the same level at a 5. We were still at the halfway mark and we didn't know who was going to end up winning this race. In terms of the driving, like you said, there was some good quality racing, but I feel like a lot of drivers got held back on this track, so that's only why I scored it a 4. In terms of the drama though, I was quite surprised. I scored this a 6. You had Yuki's car failing, you had Toto coming on the radio talking to the FIA about blue flags, the pit stops were all over the place, Gasly getting a penalty. Quite dramatic for this start. Combining all my scores together, scores the first half, a 5.
As we shifted our focus to the second half of this race, we also shifted towards paying attention to the tire degradation. We started seeing some blistering on both Max and Hamilton's tires, wondering which driver was going to be able to manage their tires best. Would it hold up until the end of the race?
And much to our surprise, Hamilton suddenly turns into the pits, catching Red Bull off guard. He switches over to a new, fresh set of medium tires. And so now we have 22 laps to go in this race, and Hamilton is 22 seconds behind.
But at the way Hamilton is reducing the gap so quickly, you just knew it was only a matter of time before Verstappen became a sitting duck.
and now Hamilton was back on the hunt to get first place back from when he lost it on the first lap.
Next, we moved down the grid ever so slightly to find Daniel and Sergio battling it out. Sergio was stuck behind Daniel for quite some time, but as Daniel's tires began to wear out, finally Perez was able to get past, but the move was phenomenal. Shortly after that, Daniel did end up pitting because I think they realized his tires were shot.
It placed Ricciardo behind his teammate, and Daniel was on the preferred strategy in this race, so it was great to see that they kind of did the reverse of what happened in Imola and let Daniel by.
However, once Norris lets his teammate by, he is immediately stuck in a battle with Carlos, who is gaining behind him. Once Carlos gets out of the slipstream and is going in to make his move, Lando makes a very late maneuver to try to block him off. As a result, Lando did end up getting a black and white flag, but no further incident happened from there, so all good.
An unexpected wheel-to-wheel battle was between the two Mercedes. Of course, with Hamilton on the hunt to chase Verstappen, you're expecting Valtteri to let Hamilton by without any issues. Valtteri gets a radio message to not hold up Lewis, but it seems like it takes a lot longer than usual for him to get past Valtteri.
Lewis did manage to get by, but it still seemed like Valtteri was squeezing him into the corner as he did so.
So with now Valtteri out of the way, Hamilton is making a substantial gain on Max, and by lap 60, he's right behind him, ready to jump.
We see the two of them barreling down the main straight, and you can just tell that Hamilton is absolutely ready to go within striking distance. We've seen it happen before, but he pulls off the overtake into the first turn. Max did try to put up a fight and cover off the line, but ultimately Hamilton just had much fresher tires, significantly better pace, and at the end of the day, there really wasn't all that much that Max could have done to prevent this.
So with Max now in second place, it opens up the obvious strategy move for Red Bull to bring him in to go after the fastest lap.
Although the battle for the lead was essentially over, we still had some phenomenal racing with only 5 laps left in this race because there were still points to fight for. You had Alonso, you had Raikkonen, you had Vettel, you had Stroll, you had Gasly, all just going up against each other. Once again, it seemed like Alonso's tires had just dropped off entirely, and this caused a little bit of an incident between him and Stroll, where Stroll tried to pull off the overtake, ended up running wide, and was then under investigation for not going around the bollards when returning on track.
At the time of recording this, we still don't know the outcome of this investigation, but it doesn't look like it overly mattered because Gasly was the one to end off in 10th place. And with that, that pretty much concludes the rest of the second half. But Cass, when you look at scoring the second half, what'd you think?
I scored my excitement a little bit lower in the second half out of 4, and it's not because it was bad, it was just because it became predictable. As soon as Hamilton jumped into the pits and essentially caught Red Bull by surprise, you knew exactly where this race was going to end off. It's not that it was bad or not entertaining, it just does remove a little bit of excitement when you can see the outcome before it even happens. However, the race was still quite dramatic because of this exact strategy, but other than that, not really that much happened drama-wise aside from this. However, because this is the element that defined the race, I still put the drama up at a 6. And then for racing, I found it was pretty much on par with the first half. You had some strong overtakes going into turn 1. You had some multi-car battles going into several corners in a row. So for the racing, I put it out of 5. So overall, that puts my second half at a 5.
Whereas for me, for the second half, I did score it lower than the first. Just with my levels of excitement, I knew there was less action to come in the second half, aside from the top 2. Which is why I only scored it a 4. In terms of the racing, I scored it a 5. Like I said earlier, the quantity of racing didn't drop all that much, and I thought it was actually better, especially when you had 5 cars going into the corners. But for me on the drama side, aside from just Hamilton coming into the pits to pull off a good strategy move, I didn't find it all that dramatic, so I only scored it a 3. Overall, when you combine my 3 scores together, the second half for me was scored at a 4. So when you combine both of our scores together, it comes out to a 4.87. We're gonna bump that up to a 5, just because this was a race that we weren't expecting to see at the Spanish Grand Prix. When looking at the standings so far this season, the Spanish Grand Prix moved up in our rankings. And it won't be the worst race of the season like last year. You'll have to tune into the next race review. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and that bell so you don't miss our race review of the Monaco Grand Prix in 2 weeks' time. If you have enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit that like button. Let us know down in the comments what you thought about this race, and we will catch you in the next video.
Bye!